Welcome. This story, sent by a viewer, features Seraphina Hayes, who was called an old relic. Her cheating ex came home from his wedding to find their 1.2 meters house demolished and him legally broke. Email your story to womenstoriessegmail.com. Prepare for the ultimate corporate and personal revenge. My ex-husband, Victor, left me for a younger woman and took our entire family to his wedding overseas. He texted, "Be gone when we return. I hate old things. I work hard, so I deserve a new life." When they came back laughing, they found only empty land where our home once stood. Their faces went white. I watched from my parked, not convenient to name car, and couldn't stop smiling. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me tell you how I got to this delicious moment. Sitting in my not convenient to name car at 2 p.m. on a crisp Wednesday afternoon, I was perfectly positioned across the street. My vehicle offered an unhindered panoramic view of the suburban theater that was about to unfold. I was watching my cheating ex-husband, Victor, now 61, and his child bride, Chloe, a relentless 28-year-old ball of synthetic energy, stare at a perfectly manicured, empty lot. This lot, now covered in expensive, freshly laid sod and meticulously edged with stone, was where our $1.2 million suburban paradise, the home where I raised our children, used to sit. The destruction was clinical, total, and complete. Oh, the look on Victor's face was priceless. A masterpiece of sudden, unadulterated shock. You'd think someone had told him his precious, not convenient to name golf club membership got revoked, or perhaps that the stock market had finally corrected against his very aggressive portfolio. His jaw hung slack, his eyes darting frantically from the neatly paved driveway, which still felt like ours, to the horizon where the two-story colonial structure should have been. 9 months ago, I was Seraphina Hayes, a name synonymous with quiet stability. I was the faithful wife of 32 years, the mother of 2 adult children who felt they deserved the world without earning it, and apparently, according to my husband, a nagging old relic who'd lost her sparkle and her relevance. Those were his exact words, delivered with the cold, clinical precision of a man reading a teleprompter, when he announced he was leaving me for Chloe, his personal trainer. The cliché was almost too perfect, reinforcing the painful truth that Victor wasn't just cheating, he was indulging in the most predictable, self-serving midlife delusion possible. Nothing says a crisis of masculinity quite like a 28-year-old with perfect abs and a deep-seated need for an older male authority figure, issues I was no longer willing to accommodate. The reaction from our family was a bitter pill to swallow. Our son Aaron, 30 and perpetually between ventures while draining my bank account, called it Dad's second chance at happiness, implying that my continued existence was somehow stifling his father's dreams. Our daughter Lexi, 27 and working as a lifestyle vlogger, which meant she took highly filtered selfies for a living and lived off brand sponsorships, actually helped plan the destination wedding in Bali. "Mom, you have to understand," she'd said, filing her nails with a careless indifference that stung more than any shout. "Dad's been unfulfilled for years. Chloe makes him feel vital again." Their complicity was the deeper wound. They had traded my stability for their father's fleeting youth fantasy. I wasn't invited to the wedding. Victor made that brutally clear when he packed his bags. "Seraphina, I need you gone when we get back. Start fresh somewhere. Maybe Arizona, where old people go to play bingo and wait for the end." He'd actually laughed at his own joke, a hollow, cruel sound, while loading his vintage racing bike and his favorite, not convenient to name designer luggage into Chloe's flashy, unnecessarily loud, not convenient to name sport car. His final words echoed in my mind like a hateful mantra. I hate old things. I work hard, so I deserve a new life. But here's the beautiful secret Victor didn't know about his old wife. I'd been planning for this day since the moment I found Chloe's Lycra workout top, small enough to be mistaken for a headband, in his gym bag 2 years ago. In that moment, the pain turned into purpose. See, Victor thought he was the financial mastermind of the family, but I'd been the quiet engine, the meticulous accountant, handling every investment, every account, every asset for decades. That man thought he owned everything, but he was about to learn the devastating expensive difference between having his name added to a document and actually possessing the underlying legal authority and knowledge. The look on their faces when they pulled into the driveway, Victor driving the rental SUV back from the airport, Chloe recording an excited arrival vlog on her phone, and found nothing but fresh sod and a huge, not convenient to name real estate company for sale sign where the front door used to be was truly cathartic. It was worth every penny, every phone call, and every silent meeting with the demolition crew. But that was just the beginning. Victor's voice, hoarse and strained, carried across the empty lot like a wounded animal desperately seeking a den. "Seraphina!" he screamed, spinning in slow, disoriented circles on the spot where the granite steps of our front porch used to be. "What did you do to my house?" I rolled down my window just enough to hear the full spectrum of his despair. This moment, unfolding in real time, was better than any high-budget drama series I'd ever binged. Chloe was clutching his arm, her carefully curated composure crumbling as she wobbled precariously on her designer platform sneakers. Sierra and grass don't mix well, a fact she seemed to be learning violently. Her platinum hair was whipping around her face in the afternoon breeze, and she looked genuinely horrified. The first authentic emotion I'd seen from her. Poor little thing probably thought she was moving into a luxury villa designed specifically for her sunrise yoga sessions. "Victor, honey, where's our house?" Chloe's voice was that special kind of whiny that could shatter glass, laced with panic and accusation. "You said we had a beautiful house with a state-of-the-art gym studio and a double spa bathroom." "We did have a house?" Victor was red-faced now, that thick vein in his forehead pulsing the way it used to when he couldn't find his smartwatch charger or his favorite tie. "Seraphina, I know you're here somewhere. This is my property." "Actually, sweetheart, it wasn't. But I wasn't about to interrupt this beautiful, messy breakdown to explain the intricacies of property law. I'd learned so much about legal loopholes and revocable trusts in the past 9 months of meticulous planning. Amazing what you can accomplish when you have time, money, and a burning desire for complete, unassailable justice. My phone buzzed softly, with a text from my divorce attorney, Dr. Helen Joe. "Demolition complete. He can't touch you legally. Enjoy the show." Dr. Joe was 62, sharp as a razor, and had been handling messy, high-profile divorces for 35 years. She understood my vision perfectly, smiling like a shark that had just spotted blood in the water during our initial consultation. Victor was now frantically dialing someone, undoubtedly his own lawyer, the poor soul who thought this was going to be a simple, amicable asset split. "What do you mean the house was legally sold?" Victor's voice cracked, the sound of a man losing control. "I lived there. My name was on the deed." Check again. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered the night he came home reeking of Chloe's sandalwood and jasmine oil, and told me I should consider professional consultation for my figure because maintenance matters in a marriage. The same man who hadn't seen the inside of a proper boardroom since the last decade was giving me beauty advice. Chloe had begun to cry in earnest, actual tears ruining her carefully applied makeup. Victor, I quit my job. I gave up my apartment. You promised me we'd have a beautiful home together. We will, baby. This is just a misunderstanding. Victor was sweating through his expensive, not convenient to name designer shirt, a shirt I'd bought him for his 50th birthday. Seraphina's just being vindictive. We'll fix this. That's when Aaron's electric scooter zoomed up to the edge of the lot. My heart did a tiny, unexpected flip, hoping for a moment of genuine filial concern. But no, Aaron hopped off his scooter, looking utterly panicked. Not about his mother, but about the missing house where he'd planned to crash between major investing opportunities. Dad, what the hell happened to the house? Aaron spat out, his voice sharp and accusatory, cutting through the thin afternoon air. He didn't sound like a grieving son. He sounded like an entitled tenant who'd just been locked out. He had driven his electric scooter right up to the for sale sign, staring at the manicured soil with a mixture of disbelief and personal grievance. Your psycho mother happened? Victor spat back, instantly throwing the blame off himself and onto the one person who deserved respect. And that right there was his second monumental mistake. The first was the relentless cheating. The second was calling me psycho in front of witnesses because I'd made sure my not-convenient-to-name phone brand was recording this entire beautiful meltdown, every syllable of his verbal abuse carefully preserved for my lawyer, Dr. Helen Joe. Dad, you can't be serious. Aaron was staring at the empty lot like he might magically sprout a house if he concentrated hard enough on his past privileges. Where are we supposed to live? I had my customized gaming setup shipped here. I need access to high-speed fiber immediately. We'll figure it out, son. Just calm down. Victor was trying desperately to sound like the patriarch, the man in control, but his voice had that familiar high-pitched tremor that signaled he was standing on the precipice of total panic. This is just temporary. Your mother's playing ridiculous games, but I'll straighten this out legally. She can't simply demolish a marital asset. Just as Victor tried to regain some semblance of authority, Lexi's not-convenient-to-name luxury hatchback screeched to a halt behind Victor's rental SUV. Her not-convenient-to-name social media famous coral-colored car looked ridiculously ostentatious and utterly out of place next to the suburban emptiness. She climbed out slowly, her phone already recording live, because heaven forbid she experience a family crisis, or more accurately, a financial collapse, without documenting it for her followers. Oh my God! Lexi's voice was thin and breathless, projecting perfectly for the microphone on her selfie stick. Dad, this is like totally insane. My childhood home is just gone. She was definitely recording this for not convenient to name video platform. I could practically read the hashtags she was typing. Gandu, family drama is wild. Rich people problems, or the inevitable when your stepmom ruins everything. Actually, sweetheart, your stepmom had nothing to do with this, I corrected silently. This was all your dear old mom, the one you haven't called in 5 months unless you needed a large wire transfer. Seraphina did this, Victor announced to Lexi with a dramatic wave of his hand, like he was delivering breaking news that absolved him of all responsibility. She sold our house out from under us while we were at the wedding. Wait, she can do that? Chloe's voice cracked, the panic in her tone momentarily overshadowing her vanity. I thought you said everything would be fine. You said we'd work out the divorce stuff later. This was the core of their delusion, the sticky web of lies Victor had spun. He had convinced his new wife they'd work out the divorce stuff later, implying a simple, non-contentious split. This lie suggested they hadn't actually gotten legally married overseas, which would mean Chloe had quit her job, given up her apartment, and publicly committed her life to a man who was still legally married to me. The sheer lack of planning was breathtaking. Of course she can't do that. It's preposterous. Victor was lying now with theatrical intensity, trying to convince the only people left who might still believe him. I'm calling my lawyer right now. This is theft. This is fraud. This is legal, I said, rolling down my window completely and stepping out of my car. I stood tall, savoring the shock that rippled through the 4 people standing awkwardly on the barren lawn. They all turned to stare at me like I'd just materialized from thin air or stepped out of a television screen. Victor's mouth actually dropped open, revealing the perfect dental work I had paid for. Chloe took a physical step backward, her eyes widening in realization. Aaron looked utterly confused, which was his standard emotional state, and Lexi immediately snapped her phone camera toward me, realizing the money shot had just arrived. "Hello, family," I said pleasantly, smoothing down my new, shorter auburn haircut. I'd spent a significant portion of my severance package on a complete physical and wardrobe refresh. Judging by Victor's slack-jawed expression, the investment was paying dividends. "How was Bali? I hear the commitment ceremonies are quite romantic." "Seraphina, what have you done?" Victor's voice was strangled, the volume turned down by disbelief. "I sold my house." I kept my tone perfectly conversational, like we were discussing the merits of a new garden hedge. "Demolished it, actually. The new owners wanted to start fresh with the lot. Can't say I blame them. The previous owner had terrible taste in lawn ornaments and garage clutter." "Your house?" Victor's face was turning a deepening shade of purple. "That was our house. We bought it together." "Actually, Victor, we didn't." I pulled out a slender file folder from my designer tote bag, the same one he'd called matronly the year before. "See? When you started your affair 2 years ago, I got curious about our finances. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that the house was purchased entirely with inheritance money from my great-aunt Lillian's estate. My name was the only one on the original deed. The silence that followed was thick, stretching out like a rubber band about to snap, filled only with the distant sound of traffic. "That's impossible," Victor whispered, shaking his head in denial. "Your name was added later as a gift when I thought we had a solid marriage, but gifts can be revoked under certain circumstances. Adultery, for instance." I smiled sweetly at Chloe, who was looking increasingly pale, confused, and slightly ill. "Victor, what is she talking about?" Chloe's voice was small now, a thin, wavering sound of dawning terror. That's when I decided to deliver the main dish of the feast. "Oh, honey, didn't he tell you? Victor and I are still married." The color drained from Chloe's face so fast, I thought she might collapse right there onto the fresh sod. "Still married?" "Very married," I confirmed cheerfully, stepping closer. "You see, Victor told everyone you two got married in Bali. But what he conveniently failed to mention is that you can't actually get legally married when you're already married to someone else. That's called bigamy, and it's a criminal offense in most civilized countries, not to mention a devastating blow to a contract." "Victor!" Chloe's voice was barely a whisper now, thick with betrayal. "Victor, tell her she's lying." Victor opened and closed his mouth repeatedly, making small, gasping noises like a fish out of water. Lexi had lowered her phone, her eyes wide with growing horror. Even Aaron, for once, was paying rapt attention. We were going to... The paperwork got complicated. Victor was stumbling over his words like a drunk man trying to walk a straight line on a painted floor. What paperwork? I asked with innocent curiosity. The divorce paperwork I never signed? The paperwork your lawyer never bothered to send me? Or maybe you mean the marriage license that doesn't exist because you're already legally married to me. This was the crescendo I had meticulously orchestrated for months. Victor had been so consumed with planning his romantic Balinese escape and his new life that he had neglected the tedious, necessary detail of filing for divorce. He had simply assumed I would vanish quietly, sign whatever he eventually sent, and let him live his best life. Men like Victor always assume women like me, after 32 years of servitude, will just roll over and play dead. They always assume we are passive, not proactive. So you two had a commitment ceremony, I continued, enjoying the visible sheen of sweat developing on Victor's forehead. Very sweet. Totally meaningless legally, but sweet. You ruined everything. Chloe finally shrieked, finding her voice again. We had plans. We were going to be happy. Were you now? I tilted my head, feigning sympathy. And those plans included living in my house, spending my money, and playing stepmom to my children, while I conveniently disappeared? How unbelievably thoughtful of you to plan my life for me. Mom, this is seriously messed up. Lexi finally lowered her phone, the recording momentarily forgotten, as the reality of the situation outweighed her need for content. She was looking at me with genuine confusion, like I had violated some unspoken family law. You can't just destroy people's lives because you're mad. Can't I? I asked, allowing a hint of steel to enter my voice. Your father destroyed my life when he decided that a marriage of 32 years was something he could just walk away from whenever he got bored, casting me aside like an old, not convenient to name appliance. He took our children's loyalty, our friends, our entire social circle, and tried to take our home. The only thing he didn't take was my brain, sweetheart. And fortunately for me, that's the only asset that truly matters in a crisis. Aaron was no longer staring at the empty lot. He was frantically typing on his not convenient to name phone brand, likely searching for cheap, immediate housing alternatives, or perhaps checking his remaining trust fund balance. The eternal trust fund baby was about to discover that trust funds have an unpleasant way of running dry when you possess no actual income source and choose not to work. Where are we supposed to go? Victor demanded, his voice shifting from anger to petulance. I have rights. I have belongings in that house. My custom wine cellar. Had, I corrected him, keeping my tone crisp and precise, using the past tense deliberately. And actually, your belongings are perfectly safe, albeit somewhat inconveniently located. They are in a storage unit across town, Unit L301. I reached into my designer tote bag and handed him a small, plain key on a silver ring. The rent is paid through the end of the month. After that, you are officially on your own. A storage unit? Victor stared at the key as if it were a dead, contaminated fish. You put my stuff in storage? I kept what mattered to me. Family photos, the antique silver, the original deed to the company, and I donated the rest to charity. I gave a light, almost dismissive shrug. It's amazing how little actually mattered when I really thought about it. 32 years of accumulated junk, and the only things I genuinely missed were my grandmother's heirloom silver and the photos of my side of the family. Everything else had just been taking up space, collecting dust, and gathering resentment. Victor stood there, clutching the key, looking completely lost and foundationless. For a split second, I almost felt a flicker of pity, a phantom pain from the past. Almost. Then Chloe opened her mouth again, her face contorted with pure, unadulterated fury. "This isn't over, you crazy old relic," she shrieked, taking a step toward me, shaking her fist. "We will sue you for everything you own." And that was the signal for the curtain call of Phase 1. I widened my smile, the genuine, victorious kind. "Old relic," I repeated slowly, pulling out my phone and tapping the screen to ensure the audio recording was still active. "That's interesting, Chloe. Tell me, how old do you think I am?" "Old enough to be completely desperate and pathetic. No wonder Victor left you," she spat. "You're bitter and cruel." "And 58, I interrupted calmly, the stark number cutting through her hysteria. "I'm 58 years old. Victor is 61. That makes me 3 years younger than your boyfriend. But I suppose when you're 28, anyone over 40 looks ancient, like a relic from a different geological era." "Age is just a number," Chloe shouted back, trying to reclaim the high ground, but her voice lacked conviction, already weakened by the cold math of my age versus Victor's. "You're absolutely right," I agreed, my voice smooth as silk, just like bankruptcy is just a word. Victor's head snapped up, the color draining from his face yet again. "What's that supposed to mean, Seraphina?" "Oh, did I not mention?" I glanced at my smartwatch, feigning impatience. "Victor, darling, you remember that significant business loan you co-signed 8 months ago? The one for Aaron's brilliant, yet spectacularly ill-fated venture capital fund?" Aaron went very still, his manic typing abruptly ceasing. "Mom, you wouldn't." "Wouldn't what, Aaron?" "Call in the loan that is now 4 months overdue. The loan that your father personally guaranteed with his signature." I looked at Victor with a devastating look of faux concern. "You did read the paperwork before you signed it, didn't you? Because the fine print was rather specific about the terms of default." Victor's face had gone from red to white to a sickly shade of green. "Aaron, you said that was just a formality. You said the business was guaranteed to succeed. You swore this was secured by future earnings." "It was," Aaron protested weakly, holding up his hands. "The market just shifted. Venture capital is volatile. I can still turn it around if I just get some bridge funding." "I'm sure you can," I said sweetly. "But the loan company doesn't seem to think so. They've been incredibly patient, but patience has limits, as does my willingness to cover for family members who think I'm just an old relic they can walk all over." Lexi was staring at me like I was a newly discovered predator. Realizing the danger was not the strange woman her father had cheated with, but the mother she had always taken for granted. "Mom, what are you saying? You've been paying Aaron's loan?" "I'm saying that I've been secretly covering Aaron's loan payments for 4 months, hoping he'd miraculously figure out how to be a responsible adult. But since he still seems to think his mother is a convenient, silent ATM, I've decided to stop enabling his incompetence immediately." "You can't do that!" Victor was escalating into full-blown panic. "If that loan defaults, they'll come after my assets. My credit will be ruined. I'll never get another mortgage." "What assets, Victor?" I asked, my voice rising in final, devastating clarity. "Your house is gone. Your savings account was frozen this morning pending the divorce proceedings. And your numerous credit cards? Well, let's just say they're about to be very, very disappointed when they try to collect on those staggering balances." This was the final piece of the financial setup, the information I had held back for maximum impact. Victor thought he'd been clever, hiding cash and accumulating debt in accounts I wouldn't track, but he had gravely underestimated my dedication and my access. I'd known about every secret card, every hidden expense, and every dollar he'd lavished on Chloe's designer athletic wear and weekend getaways. I had simply been waiting for this exact, perfect time to strike. "How did you—" Victor started to ask, his voice hoarse. Then he trailed off, unable to articulate the specific violation of privacy he was referring to. He didn't have to finish the thought. The accusation was clear in his wide, frantic eyes. "How did I know about your secret accounts? About the money you've been spending so freely on your new fiancé? About the debts you've been so meticulously hiding?" I shrugged, giving him a look that conveyed pure condescension. "Frankly, Victor, it wasn't difficult. I handled our finances for 32 years, remember? Did you truly believe I wouldn't notice when you suddenly started acting like a teenager with a stolen credit card? Especially when your spending patterns became so ridiculously focused on one specific 28-year-old aesthetic?" Chloe was visibly shaking now, her face a mask of escalating fear and confusion. She looked between Victor and me, her perfect makeup finally failing to conceal the distress beneath. "Victor, what is she talking about? What money? What debts? You told me you were financially independent." "It's nothing, baby. Just some temporary miscalculations." Victor was sweating profusely through his tailor-made, not convenient to name designer shirt, which now clung damply to his chest. He was denying the obvious, desperately trying to protect the fragile facade of wealth he had built for Chloe. $65,000 in revolving credit card debt, I announced cheerfully, reciting the precise figure with the detached confidence of a financial analyst. All exclusively in Victor's name, of course. It's truly amazing how quickly expenses accumulate when you're attempting to sustain the illusion of eternal youth and extravagant wealth for a young woman who demands constant material validation. Luxury watches, multiple weekend casino trips. That entirely unnecessary, not convenient to name sport car. And let's not forget the sheer volume of designer athletic wear. You bought me that, not convenient to name sport car, for my birthday. Chloe shrieked, betrayal evident in her voice as she rounded on Victor. You told me it was paid for. It is paid for. Eventually, Victor insisted, his defense crumbling rapidly. I mean, it will be. The payments are totally manageable. $985 a month, I chimed in helpfully, holding up a finger. Plus, the insurance for a 28-year-old driver in a high-risk vehicle category, given the frequent speeding tickets, is another $450 a month. That doesn't even account for the premium gasoline. Chloe was doing the math in her head, the cold, hard reality of monthly bills versus the fantasy of passive income. And the numbers clearly weren't aligning with the luxurious lifestyle she had signed up for. Victor, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous low. You told me you were wealthy. You said money wasn't a problem, that you owned everything outright. It's not a problem. Seraphina's just being vindictive. Once the divorce is finalized, I'll get half of everything, and half of what? I cut him off, my voice laced with pity and finality. Victor, sweetie, I've explained this. There is no everything to split. There is only debt, mountains of it, all meticulously arranged in your name. And that was the precise defining moment. The moment Chloe realized she had gambled her career and stability on a man who was not only a bigamist, but also catastrophically insolvent. She had traded her independence for a mirage. It was a beautiful thing to witness. Wait. Chloe frantically tried to clear the smoke of my revelations. Victor, you told me you owned a successful company. You said you were planning to retire in 2 years on the profits. I do own a company, Victor protested weakly, but his bluster was gone, replaced by a desperate plea. Apex Construction has been incredibly profitable for 20 years. Apex Construction, I chuckled, the sound light and airy. Oh, honey, that's just precious. Tell her about Apex Construction. Victor, tell Chloe who actually owns the company. Victor's silence was the definitive answer, but I was too far gone in my moment of triumph to stop now. You see, Chloe, Victor loves to tell people he owns a major construction company. What he habitually omits is that Apex Construction is owned entirely by me. I am the sole proprietor, the one who took the risks, the one who secured the initial lines of credit, and the one whose name is on every single legal document. Victor is an employee, a very handsomely compensated employee, I grant you, but he is, and always has been, just an employee. That's impossible, Victor was sputtering, his entire identity dissolving before his eyes. Is it? Should I call Mr. Benji, the site manager, and ask him whose name is on his paycheck? Mr. Benji is a wonderful man who's been running the actual difficult operations for years while Victor played golf at his prestigious club and told people he was a business owner. Or perhaps we should ask the IRS, since I've been personally filing the business taxes for 2 decades. This, truly, was the zenith of my plan. Victor had spent so many years basking in the credit for my hard work, using my money and my business decisions to prop up his vanity, that he had actually started believing his own colossal lies. He genuinely thought he owned the company, despite every legal document unequivocally showing my name. But I built that company, Victor screamed, pointing a shaky finger at the empty lot, as if the foundation still remained. I worked 70 hours a week for years. You worked for me, Victor, I corrected gently. And you were compensated generously for your labor. But owning a business, that requires legal paperwork, Victor. The kind of boring, complex paperwork that I handled because you hated boring stuff like contracts and tax forms. Lexi, still filming, looked utterly bewildered. Mom, are you saying Dad literally doesn't own anything? Not even his own company? That's precisely what I'm saying, sweetheart. Your father has been living off my money, in my house, working for my company and spending my credit for years. The only things he can legally claim are his golf clubs and his vast collection of that ridiculous, not convenient to name designer shirt collection. She's lying. Aaron, son, you know I'm successful. You've seen the company trucks, the job sites, Victor pleaded with his son. I've seen Mom's company trucks, Dad, Aaron said slowly, his eyes finally clearing as the pieces clicked into place. And Mom's the one who taught me about business licenses and quarterly tax law. Mom's the one who showed me how to read the financial statements. You always said that was women's work, Dad. The devastating realization on Aaron's face made it clear he finally understood his true patron. This is insane, Chloe declared, tears streaming down her face, but the rage was replacing the pity. I'm calling my mother. I'm going home. That might be a problem, Chloe, Victor said quietly, his bluster completely evaporated, leaving him sounding hollow and defeated. He looked at Chloe with a desperate helplessness that finally revealed his true, insecure self. What do you mean, might be a problem? Chloe demanded, her voice shrill with hysteria. You said you gave up your apartment. I gave up my career. We were getting married. You said we'd live in your beautiful house. The sheer volume of her panic was reaching a fever pitch climbing toward a frequency that was likely making dogs wince several streets away. "We can figure this out, baby. Just give me a minute to call my lawyer. I'll get an injunction," Victor insisted, frantically trying to grab hold of any remaining shred of control or legal fantasy. But even he didn't sound convinced anymore. The desperation in his voice was palpable. "Figure what out, Victor?" I asked, my voice cutting through his panicked stammering with surgical precision. "Let's review the facts. You have no house, no savings, no assets, and a mountain of unsecured credit card debt. Chloe has no job, no apartment, and apparently no legal relationship with you despite the expensive trip to Bali. Aaron has a failed business and a catastrophic loan he can't repay. Lexi has, well, actually, Lexi has her influencer career, so she's probably the most solvent one here, provided she keeps her views up." "Thanks, Mom," Lexi muttered, realizing the backhanded compliment for what it was. "You're entirely welcome, sweetheart." I looked around the defeated group, all of them staring at me like I was a newly arrived alien life form who had just redefined the rules of gravity and finance. "This little dramatic performance has been utterly fascinating, but I have an appointment with my lawyer, Dr. Helen Joe, in less than an hour. We are finalizing the last details of the divorce papers and, more importantly, discussing the necessary restraining order." Restraining order? Victor's voice was thin, a mere whisper of its former arrogant self. "Oh, yes, darling, a restraining order." I nodded brightly. "You see, when you sent me that text telling me to be gone when you return, and when you publicly called me a nagging old relic in front of multiple witnesses, including a social media influencer, and when your girlfriend here called me a crazy old relic and explicitly stated, 'This isn't over,' well, that collective behavior constitutes harassment, emotional distress, and possibly threatening behavior. Dr. Zhou believes we have an ironclad case." Chloe went deathly quiet, her eyes wide with fear as she realized the potential legal consequences of her temper tantrum. Too late for silence. "The restraining order," I continued, emphasizing the severity, "will prevent any of you from contacting me, coming within 600 feet of my new residence, or attempting to interfere in any way with my business operations, which, as we've established, is Apex Construction." "Your new residence?" Victor asked weakly, the full implication of my finality sinking in. Where is that?" I offered him a serene smile and pulled out the key fob to my new, not convenient to name luxury SUV. "Did I not mention? I purchased a rather lovely condo downtown. Cash purchase, of course. It's in a highly secure, gated community with excellent security, offering stunning panoramic views of the city. And, most importantly, it has absolutely no space for ungrateful adult children or financially irresponsible, cheating ex-husbands." That's when I delivered the final non-negotiable blow of Phase 2. "Oh, and Victor, you might want to check your email, or perhaps have your lawyer check his official legal portal. The final divorce papers were officially filed this morning. Since you never responded to any of the previous legal notifications, and since you've been blatantly and publicly committing adultery for 2 years, this is going to be what is legally termed an uncontested divorce." I paused, allowing the gravity of the term to settle over him. His face was a ghastly shade of gray-green. "The terms are quite simple," I finished, my voice devoid of emotion. "I get everything. You, Victor, get nothing, save for the mountains of debt you accumulated trying to impress your young companion. And your girlfriend gets to learn the harsh reality of dating a broke, homeless, middle-aged man with utterly ruined credit and a complete lack of foresight." I climbed back into my not convenient to name car, the engine purring softly, a stark contrast to the emotional wreckage surrounding me. I rolled down the window one final time, the scent of fresh sod and Chloe's expensive perfume mixing with the exhaust. Have a wonderful day, everyone. And remember what you said, Victor. I work hard too. So, I deserve my new life. As I drove slowly away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. They were all standing there on the empty lot. Victor, Chloe, Aaron, and Lexi, motionless, like survivors of a bizarre natural disaster, trying desperately to figure out what fundamental force had just annihilated their entire reality. But I knew, and they were about to learn. The force was simply a woman who had been underestimated for 32 years. I wasn't done with them yet. Phase 3 was already in motion, and it was going to be even more educational. 3 weeks later, the chaos of the empty lot felt like a distant, slightly embarrassing dream. I was sitting in my stunning new downtown condo, specifically on the expansive balcony, sipping a vintage, not convenient to name wine brand. The city below me, viewed through the floor-to-ceiling glass railings, was a vibrant, sparkling tapestry of light and possibility. My new life was the definition of luxury: quiet, meticulously organized, and completely, blissfully mine. I was enjoying the silence, the blissful, profound silence of a home with no ungrateful occupants, when my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed Aaron's number. I actually debated whether to answer for several long, satisfying moments. I watched the city traffic flowing below, considering the sheer inconvenience of having to engage with the architects of my recent misery. Curiosity, however, got the better of me. This was the opening act of Phase 3, after all. "Hello, Aaron," I answered, keeping my voice cool, calm, and utterly detached. "Mom, we need to talk." His voice was drastically different from the entitled, demanding tone I was used to. It was strained, hollow, and thick with an exhaustion that suggested he had encountered physical labor, or worse, real-world responsibility. "Can I come over? Please, it's urgent." "I'm sorry, but that's genuinely not possible," I replied smoothly, taking another slow, appreciative sip of my wine. The subtle tannin notes paired perfectly with the view. "There's a restraining order, remember? You'd have to remain 600 feet away from my building, which, given the building security and the fact that you'd be standing in the middle of a busy 6-lane intersection, I highly recommend against violating." "Mom, please. I know we screwed up. I know Dad screwed up," he pleaded, the desperation leaking into his tone. "But this is getting completely out of hand. I haven't slept in 2 days." I watched a taxi navigate the complex downtown streets. Through my enormous windows, the city sparkled below me like a jewelry box filled with diamonds. My new life was a masterpiece of quiet vengeance and strategic withdrawal. "What exactly is getting out of hand, Aaron?" "Everything. Dad is sleeping in his, not convenient to name, SUV. He's parking it in different commercial garage levels every night because he's afraid of getting towed. Chloe moved back in with her parents in Ohio and won't return his calls. She posted a cryptic, not convenient to name social media, story about dodging a broke midlife missile. And Lexi, she's pretending this whole thing never happened, but she's getting dragged on social media because someone posted video of the empty lot thing using the hashtag #HomelessHustler. How unfortunate for her personal brand, I noted, my sympathy meter resting firmly at 0. "And the loan company, Mom? They're really aggressive. They're calling Dad at work, at the company. And they're threatening to garnish his wages. He's going to lose his only source of income." "That's precisely how debt collection works, Aaron," I explained patiently, as if instructing a child on basic physics. You borrow money. You sign the paperwork promising to repay it. If you fail to repay it, they escalate the collection methods. It's a beautifully simple concept called consequences. But he can't afford the payments, not with his rental expense for the car and the storage unit fees and everything else. This was the crux of the conversation, the moment they all realized how utterly dependent they were. The moment they came crawling back, realizing exactly how much I had been quietly holding their entire privileged lifestyle together. Aaron, let me ask you a question, and I want an honest answer, I said, leaning forward. When your father was living in my house, eating food I bought, driving cars I paid for, and working at my company, how much did he contribute to household expenses, mortgage, and utilities over the last decade? Silence stretched across the line, heavy and telling. I'll tell you how much, I continued, answering my own question. 0. Frank hasn't paid for his own genuine living expenses in well over a decade. Everything he earned at Apex Construction went directly toward his hobbies, his expensive toys, his girlfriends, and propping up his vanity projects. I paid the mortgage, the utilities, the insurance, the groceries, the home maintenance, the property taxes. I subsidized his entire elaborate lifestyle while he told people he was a successful businessman and I was just the wife. Mom, I didn't know the extent of it, Aaron stammered. You didn't want to know, Aaron, I corrected gently but firmly. None of you wanted to know where the money came from or the effort required to manage it, as long as it kept flowing effortlessly into your hands. You just assumed I would always be there, always paying the bills, always cleaning up your financial messes, always silently accepting the disrespect. That's not fair, is it? Jake, you're 30 years old. You've never held a steady job, never paid rent, never even bought your own groceries consistently. Your father is 61 and has never balanced a checkbook in his life. Lexi makes money taking selfies, but she doesn't understand COBRA or capital gains. You're all financial children living in an adult world, and the babysitter just quit. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line, the sound ragged. What do you want us to do? He asked finally, the sound of total capitulation in his voice. I want you to grow up, I stated simply. I want you to learn what it feels like to work for something, to save for something, instead of having it handed to you. I want you to understand, truly understand, what I felt like for 32 years. Being taken for granted by the very people who were supposed to love and respect me. Okay, I get it. We took advantage. We were ungrateful, he conceded, rushing through the apology. But Mom, what's done is done. Can't we move forward? Can't we be a family again? We were never a family, Aaron, I said, sadly, leaning back into my cushion. We were a woman, raising 3 grown, entitled men, your father and you two, who treated her like hired help, a personal concierge, and an unlimited ATM. That final observation visibly stung him, even over the phone. So what now? You're just going to let Dad be homeless? Let me go bankrupt? I'm not letting anything happen, Aaron. You are adults making adult choices and now facing the predictable adult consequences. This is called real life. But you could help us, he insisted, his voice hardening with residual entitlement. You have the money. The company is doing well. And there it was. The real reason for the call. They weren't sorry for how they'd treated me. They weren't interested in making amends or rebuilding a relationship. They just wanted me to fix their problems and write them another check. You're right, I said calmly. I do have money, and the company is doing very well. Mr. Benji is an excellent site manager, And without your father there to interfere with operations, we are actually more efficient and profitable than we've ever been. Wait, what do you mean, without Dad there? Ah, Victor hadn't shared the latest piece of news with his son. Your father was terminated 2 weeks ago, Aaron, I explained, sounding slightly bored. Excessive personal calls during work hours, using company resources for personal business, and a clear pattern of inappropriate behavior that was severely affecting morale. I fired an employee who wasn't performing his duties. The fact that he used to be my husband is utterly irrelevant to business operations. I hung up the phone before he could respond, cutting the conversation cleanly. Outside my window, the city hummed with life and possibility. My wine was the perfect temperature. My condo was exactly the right amount of quiet, and I had absolutely no one to take care of except myself. It was definitively the best feeling in the world. The silence of my condo lasted exactly 48 hours after my conversation with Aaron. I had spent the time reading the latest financial reports from Apex Construction, which were surprisingly excellent, thanks to Mr. Benji's reliable management and the absence of Victor's unnecessary, lavish expenses. I was just reviewing my investment strategy for the proceeds from the house sale when my phone lit up with a video call request from Lexi. Unlike Aaron's desperate voice call, Lexi always preferred video. She understood the power of visual presentation, even in a crisis. I accepted the call, making sure my background, a tasteful, abstract oil painting hung over a sleek, not convenient to name minimalist credenza, was perfectly framed. "Mom," Lexi began, her tone a careful blend of contrition and calculated poise. She wasn't crying, but her eyes held a certain strained earnestness. She was in a brightly lit, sterile location, probably a cheap Airbnb or a friend's spare room. Her usual luxury apartment was clearly no longer an option. "We need to talk. Seriously. As adults." "I'm all for adult conversations, Lexi," I replied, my voice even and calm. "But I must remind you the restraining order remains fully in effect for all physical contact. If this conversation deviates into threats or attempts to manipulate my finances, I will hang up immediately and notify Dr. Zhou." "No, Mom, I promise," she insisted, giving me the kind of practiced, sincere look she usually reserved for luxury brand sponsorship deals. "I want to apologize. Genuinely. I watched the clip of us at the old house again. The one that got leaked, I mean, and, well, Dad and Chloe were awful. And I was selfish. I was only thinking about losing my access to money and the house, not what you actually went through for 32 years. I raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "That's a very pretty speech, Lexi. Did you write that yourself, or did your publicist suggest you needed to control the narrative?" She sighed, a dramatic flutter of the eyelashes that only served to annoy me. "I wrote it, but yes, my team did suggest that this whole public meltdown is severely impacting my, not convenient to name social media, engagement rates. My followers want to see glamorous luxury mom, not homeless family drama. They're calling me daughter dearest and posting screenshots of me ignoring your calls." "So, this is a damage control operation," I summarized dryly. "It's a compromise," she countered, leaning slightly closer to the camera, a genuine flash of intelligence finally showing in her eyes. "Look, I know you won't fix Dad's problems. He deserved to lose everything. Aaron is a lost cause until he's forced to work. But I am offering you something genuine. A way out of the legal mess with Victor, and a massive PR boost for Apex Construction." This piqued my interest. "Explain." "Your divorce is uncontested, but Dad will still drag it through the courts for years, making your life miserable, if only out of spite. He'll appeal every decision, tie up your business, and generally become a non-performing asset in your personal life. But what if I make him stop? How could you possibly stop Victor? I asked skeptically. I can give you the legal leverage to prove his hidden assets, the ones he thinks Dr. Joe can't find. I know about his secret offshore account in the Cayman Islands, the one he set up to hide money from the IRS and you. He showed it to me once, boasting, "Give me a reason, Mom. Give me something I can gain." I see. You want a quid pro quo, I noted. What is your price, Lexi? The price is this. I need a new apartment and 6 months of funding to stabilize my brand image. I'll drop the legal dirt on Dad, sign a waiver never to ask you for a penny again, and, in return, I will use my 3 million followers to launch a full-scale social media campaign for Apex Construction. Think of it. Woman-owned business. Sarah Hayes builds dreams. Char from wife to CEO. It will be the most incredible, positive PR turnaround in the industry. It will drive massive, lucrative contracts your way. The offer was crude, self-serving, and utterly typical of Lexi, but it was also brilliant. The idea of using her massive digital platform to brand me as a successful feminist CEO rather than just a bitter ex-wife was appealing. It could double Apex's market value overnight. That's a very compelling pitch, Lexi, I admitted. But before I consider any investment in your brand stabilization, you need to give me something concrete. Tell me everything about Victor's offshore account. I want names, banks, and the exact value. Lexi hesitated for a moment, weighing the risk, before deciding the reward was worth it. She provided me with the bank name, the account number, and the estimated value. A staggering $500,000 he had been siphoning off the business over the last 5 years. I listened, my mind calculating the legal ramifications. Thank you, Lexi. Dr. Joe will be very pleased with this information. Now, for the final thing. I have a business partner you don't know about. Before I consider funding your transition, you need to convince me you won't undermine my relationship with them. A partner? Who? She asked, genuinely surprised. Someone who has been running the company for me for years, while Victor took the credit. Someone who is now my co-owner and the foundation of Apex's success, I revealed, a small, triumphant smile playing on my lips. The partner is Mr. Benji. He's not just the site manager. He owns 49% of the non-voting shares. I gifted him the stake when Victor started his affair. We planned this together, and you will respect that, Lexi. Lexi's eyes widened, realizing the depth of the planning. She was dealing with a corporate strategist, not just a disgruntled ex-wife. Understood, Mom. Mr. Benji and you. I will pitch the campaign to both of you. Good, I said, leaning back. Now send me the written proposal for the campaign. Then, and only then, will I forward your information to my financial advisor. Consider this the interview for your new job. I ended the call, leaving Lexi with a clearly defined task and the promise of a potential reward. The power dynamic had been fully reversed. The information Lexi provided regarding Victor's secret offshore account proved to be the final, crucial component of my legal strategy. Within 48 hours of receiving the details, I was seated between Dr. Helen Joe and Mr. Benji in the discreet luxury of her downtown law office. Excellent, Dr. Joe, the sharp, silver-haired attorney, declared, her smile mirroring the predatory satisfaction of a shark closing in for the final decisive bite. With this Cayman Islands account, we can prove Victor not only committed adultery and abandonment, but also engaged in deliberate financial fraud and asset concealment. This single piece of evidence renders any future appeal attempt he might launch absolutely futile. This is an uncontested divorce case, closed and sealed with perfect precision. Mr. Benji, who had efficiently managed Apex Construction for years under the cover of a site manager role, nodded his approval. I've issued an internal memo to all staff. Victor was terminated for gross misconduct and inefficiency, entirely separate from your personal life. Morale is actually up. The company is running smoother than ever, and we've already secured a lucrative new municipal contract in the Port District. And what about Lexi's proposal? I asked, looking directly at Mr. Benji. From a pure business standpoint, it's a worthwhile PR investment, he stated, maintaining his usual professional caution. 3 million followers is undeniable reach. Branding Apex as a successful, woman-owned and operated firm, especially after this very public separation, will generate a powerful, aspirational brand narrative. I accept the risk, Sarah. Let's give her the chance to earn her keep. With the backing of my and Mr. Benji's newly formed partnership, I transferred a significant sum into a controlled trust account for Lexi, enough to secure a high-end apartment and stabilize her brand image for 6 months, strictly tied to contractual obligations regarding the Apex PR campaign, and an ironclad commitment to cease all contact with Victor regarding financial matters. By the end of that week, Lexi had uploaded a highly produced 15-minute video across all her platforms. She carefully avoided naming Victor or Chloe, but the context was unmistakably clear. She apologized for her past complacency, praised her mother, Seraphina Hayes, for courageously standing up against male entitlement, and declared her full allegiance to her newly rebranded CEO mother. The video concluded with a stunning, high-definition aerial shot of a finished Apex construction site, complete with the powerful new slogan, Sacri Sarah Hayes builds dreams. The campaign went viral, exploding across news feeds and garnering massive positive attention for the company. Simultaneously, Victor received the final notice regarding the divorce decree. Given the damning evidence of the offshore account, his attempt to conceal assets, and his protracted silence during the legal proceedings, the court ruled definitively in my favor. The uncontested divorce was final. I retained 100% of the business assets, 100% of the sale proceeds from the house, and Victor was assigned sole responsibility for all the accumulated personal and business-related debts he had incurred. Stripped of his job, his home, and his legal standing, Victor had no choice but to sell the remaining assets, including the luxury car he had rented and then bought, to pay down a fraction of his escalating debt. He was technically homeless, oscillating between sleeping in a cheap rental car and a folding cot inside his monthly paid storage unit. 2 days after the final ruling, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, clearly masked. I knew instantly who it was. I took the call. Seraphina, Victor's voice started, utterly devoid of its former bombast and arrogance. It was replaced by a smooth, manipulative tenderness. My darling, I know I was wrong. I made terrible mistakes. But I miss you. I miss our life. I remained silent, letting him continue his performance, taking a slow, steady breath, refusing to allow any emotion to betray my resolve. Darling, I'm here in Washington. I have nowhere to go. Everything I tried to build fell apart. I just need a place to stay, a place to stabilize. Can you give me 1 month? Just a corner in the condo. I can work for you. I can help out at Apex. His voice was thick with self-pity, a manufactured despair, not genuine remorse. You are not employed by Apex, Victor, I stated clearly, my voice cold and firm. And you do not have a corner in any property I own. My condo has security and a restraining order. You are legally forbidden from coming within 600 feet of me. Don't do this, Sarah. We had 32 years. You can't just throw everything away. I still love you. I can fix this. I'll dump Chloe permanently, I promise. He pleaded desperately, attempting to use the final tool of the manipulator: emotional bartering. And that was the moment I delivered the final, non-negotiable ultimatum, the sentence that would close this chapter forever. You are absolutely correct, Victor. We had 32 years. I took one last breath. In those 32 years, you spent my money, claimed my work as your own, committed adultery, called me an old relic, and abandoned me for a younger woman. You publicly stated that you worked hard, so you deserved a new life. And I agree with you, I continued, letting the words sink in. I also worked hard. I worked 10 times harder than you did to build Apex and run that house. And that is why I deserve a new life. A life without you, without your debts, and without your emotional manipulation. Here is the truth, Victor. As of today, I am no longer your wife. I am no longer the mother of your problems. I am no longer your creditor, your guarantor, or your caregiver. You are absolutely non-existent in my life. If you want a new life, build it from the ground up, but you will build it alone. Never call me again. Never attempt to contact me, directly or indirectly. This is the last time you will ever hear my voice. I hung up the phone, turned it off, and then calmly blocked the number permanently. I was finished. There were no tears, no regrets, just a profound, cold sense of peace and absolute finality. I stood up, walking to my balcony to look out over the glittering city. I had successfully reclaimed my life, and it was finally a masterpiece of my own making. The absolute silence that followed the termination of my contact with Victor was not empty. It was rich with the sound of my own independence. After blocking the final number, I felt a deep, cleansing calm. The chapter was closed. Victor was an anecdote, a cautionary tale, and a financially ruined ex-employee. My focus immediately shifted to the only people who still held a complex place in my life: my children, Aaron and Lexi. Their paths diverged predictably in the following months. Lexi, the eternal pragmatist and digital opportunist, fully committed to the Apex Construction PR campaign. She rebranded herself from a generic lifestyle vlogger into a CEO's daughter and corporate brand strategist. The Mere Sarah Hayes Builds Dreams campaign was a phenomenal success. It wasn't just about beautiful PR. It generated tangible results. Apex secured 3 major commercial building contracts, citing our new, powerful brand story and the highly engaged online community Lexi had cultivated. Mr. Benji and I were impressed. Lexi was manipulative and self-serving, yes, but she was finally directing her considerable energy towards something productive. She earned her 6 months of funding and her new apartment. When the 6 months were up, I did not offer her a renewal. Instead, I offered her a contract. A percentage of any new business she brought to Apex using her digital platform. She was furious initially, but she soon realized she had to earn the money herself, and she accepted. She had learned a tough, necessary lesson. I was no longer an ATM. I was a client, a business partner, and a boundary setter. She was forced to stand on her own, and to my surprise, she thrived. The resentment remained, but it was now tempered by a grudging professional respect. Aaron's journey, unfortunately, was far more painful, largely due to his own inertia. The venture capital loan eventually defaulted. He was forced to move back to the city Chloe's parents lived in, sleeping on his grandparents' sofa while facing a complex legal battle to resolve the debt that Victor had co-signed. He learned the harsh reality of the job market the hard way. A 30-year-old with no transferable skills beyond investing and an appalling credit history was not highly sought after. He called me twice after the initial conversation. The first time, he wept, begging me to bail him out to save his future. The second time, he was colder, accusing me of destroying the family out of spite. Both times, I listened in silence, then repeated the same phrase before hanging up. "Aaron, this is a consequence, not a choice I made for you. I am not the mother you knew." He never called again. I sent him one last thing: a certified letter containing the contact information for a nonprofit organization that specialized in financial literacy and career training for young adults. It was the only help I was willing to offer, a guide to self-sufficiency, not a handout. As for Victor, the last I heard from my former lawyer, he was living in a sparsely furnished rented room above a dry cleaner's shop in an industrial park. Chloe was long gone. She had found a new, genuinely wealthy fiancé, making her midlife missile comment a brutally accurate prophecy. Victor was trying to start a tiny, independent contracting business with an old friend, a sad, desperate attempt to reclaim his former success, but without the legal backing, reputation, or financial structure of Apex Construction. He was struggling immensely. He had finally achieved his goal, a new life built entirely on his own efforts. The only difference was that his effort produced failure, not the luxury he had envisioned. I never spoke to him again, and the restraining order ensured he never came near my new life. My life, on the other hand, was an absolute revelation. I spent my days immersed in the strategic management of Apex Construction, working closely with Mr. Benji. I rediscovered my talent for high-stakes negotiation, my love for financial planning, and the sheer satisfaction of building something tangible and real. I also rediscovered myself. I traveled without having to plan around Victor's golf schedule. I took a cooking class I'd always wanted. I invested in art and attended gallery openings where people sought me out not as Victor's wife, but as Seraphina Hayes, the formidable CEO who had engineered one of the most talked-about corporate and personal turnarounds of the decade. I was a respected woman, a strategic thinker, and an independent entity. One quiet evening, months later, I was on my condo balcony, the city lights reflecting beautifully in my wine glass. I looked out, no longer seeing the city as a backdrop to my pain, but as a territory I had conquered and now commanded. I thought about the text Victor had sent me almost a year ago. "Be gone when we return. I hate old things. I work hard, so I deserve a new life." I had been gone. I had sold the old thing, the house, and the old relic, the person I used to be. And because I worked hard, I had built the new life I truly deserved. The masterpiece was complete. The story was over, and it was the happiest ending I could have ever written for myself. 18 months had passed since the day the house vanished, and Victor's life dissolved into a cloud of debt and regret. My new life was no longer new. It was simply my life, structured, profitable, and deeply fulfilling. The apartment had become a home, Apex Construction had grown by 40%, and Dr. Helen Jo had successfully quashed Victor's single, pathetic attempt to appeal the divorce judgment, citing the overwhelming evidence of fraud and the explicit waiver signed by his own lawyer during the settlement process. Tonight, I was not simply Seraphina Hayes, CEO. I was an honoree. I stood on the stage of the City Grand Ballroom, accepting the prestigious Woman of the Year in Construction and Development award. The applause was deafening, a cascade of genuine admiration from industry peers, not the polite, obligatory claps I was used to giving at Victor's endless, self-congratulatory corporate dinners. I was dressed in a stunning, not convenient to name designer gown, a vibrant emerald green that perfectly complemented my auburn hair. I was 59 years old, and I had never felt more powerful or more visible. As I approached the podium, I scanned the audience. Mr. Benji was beaming from a front table flanked by our new, highly diverse executive team. He had become not just a business partner, but a trusted friend. And then I saw her, sitting discreetly near the back. Lexi. She hadn't told me she was coming. She was wearing a beautiful but surprisingly conservative dress, no longer filming herself, but simply watching. Our relationship was now purely transactional, yet complex. She was Apex's biggest freelance PR asset, but she kept a careful, emotional distance. Her face was etched with a mixture of pride for my success and the lingering resentment of a daughter who knew her mother had traded unconditional love for definitive justice. My acceptance speech was brief and calculated. I thanked the employees, I thanked Mr. Benji, and then I spoke about the concept of building. For years, I said, my voice resonating clearly across the vast room, I focused on building a family, a home, and a supportive environment for others. I did this quietly, in the background, without acknowledgement. When that foundation was undermined and destroyed by infidelity and greed, I learned that the most important thing any person can build is a second foundation, one based on self-respect, financial independence, and ironclad boundaries. I didn't mention Victor, Chloe, or the past. The silence spoke volumes. As I stepped down, I caught Lexi's eye. She gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod, not of love, but of respect. That, I realized, was the true prize of my victory, not reconciliation, but recognition. I had forced my children to acknowledge my worth, even if they couldn't fully accept my methods. Later that evening, in the quiet solitude of my condo, the high of the award began to fade, replaced by a final philosophical contemplation. I reflected on the fate of the two men who had shaped the darkest parts of my life, Victor and Aaron. Victor had disappeared almost entirely. He was last reported working as a freelance consultant for small-scale residential renovations, living paycheck to paycheck, haunted by the debt collectors he could no longer hide from. He had been erased from the life he cherished, the country club, the elite social circles, the illusion of wealth. He had his new life, built entirely on his own effort, and it was a miserable, grinding struggle. I had exacted justice, not just revenge. I hadn't destroyed him. I had simply removed the elaborate, expensive support system I had built for him. Aaron was the heavier weight. He was struggling, but slowly, painfully, stabilizing. He had taken the job training advice and was now working as a basic construction project coordinator for a competing firm. A painful irony, given his father's history with Apex. He had learned humility, but the bitterness was slow to fade. He sent me an email 6 months ago, not asking for money, but simply sharing a picture of an apartment lease he had signed. It was a small, quiet victory that meant more than any business award. He was finally standing, however shakily, on his own 2 feet. I poured myself a final glass of wine and walked onto the balcony. The city below was the real prize, a concrete landscape I now controlled, managed, and helped shape. The empty lot where my old house stood had been sold again by the firm I originally dealt with, and a luxurious multi-story residential tower was now rising in its place. A new foundation, indeed. I thought about the word relic. Victor had called me an old relic, something to be discarded. But a relic, I realized, is not just something old. It is an object of value from the past, often cherished, sometimes worshipped, sometimes possessing a profound, almost forgotten power. Victor mistook my quiet diligence for weakness, my loyalty for subservience. He didn't see the relic, he just saw the dust jacket. The truth was, I wasn't just a survivor, I was a creator. I had taken the blueprint of my own life, recognized the structural damage caused by years of neglect, demolished the compromised foundation, and built an entirely new edifice, one stronger, taller, and much more beautiful than the old. I had rebuilt myself in the image of the power I always possessed. Leaning on the glass railing, feeling the cool night air, I felt complete peace. I had achieved the triple goal: financial security, profound self-respect, and absolute freedom from the emotional demands of ungrateful people. The old life was burned away. The new legacy had begun. The masterpiece was truly finished. Seraphina proved justice is best served cold, profitable, and totally legal. If you were shocked by this masterpiece of revenge, we want your story. Send your true stories of transformation and justice to womenstoriessegmail.com. Like, subscribe, and never underestimate the quiet wife.